All right, here we go.
Welcome. Good morning. It looks like we're live,
Yes.
coming to you live. Welcome. This is Are You There, God? It's Kira and Phil, and I am the Reverend Kira Austin Young, priest in charge of St. Anne's Episcopal Church in Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm the Reverend Philip Duvall, rector of Church of the Redeemer in Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City. It is so good to be with you. The Reverend Kira Austin Young. I mean, it's true. Those are our titles.
Yeah.
Do you know what I love about those titles, by the way?
What do you love about it?
Is that you're literally telling someone I should be revered. Like that's what reverend means, one who is to be revered. So it's like, it's not the reverend, right? It's not like we're being called reverent people. It's like we are telling people
we should be revered.
Don't forget to revere me.
Yeah, but even telling people I was going to graduate school to get my master's of divinity, like there's a whole lot of
yes. Well,
as if divinity is something that can be mastered or that I am somehow.
So I have feelings about that too.
Afterwards,
right? I have feelings about that too because it turns out like at the Virginia Seminary, I'm almost 99% sure. I'm pretty sure my degree says master's in divinity, which I think is slightly
better.
Divinity as a subject. I have my master's degree in that topic, but master of divinity, yes, it feels a little bit gauche.
Yeah,
it's a little, which is one of my favorite words, by the way. It feels a little what's that word? I'm trying to think of that word. Like when Jesus says like, don't sit at the head of the table because someone might show up who's more important than you and tell you to move down. So always start at the lowest part of the table and maybe they'll invite you up.
Yeah.
Like I always, whenever like you're like, I'm a master of divinity, I feel, or I'm reverend, I feel like it's like, I'll be at the head of the table if you need me. And then someone's going to show up and be like, no.
Not you.
No. So anyways, but here we all are being reverend and whatnot. Hey, how's your last week been, Kira?
It's been okay. I think we were just sharing with each other before we got live that we've both been just pretty busy. There's a writer whose newsletter I enjoy reading, and he said in this week's, he was like, so October 2021 is the month when all of the 2020 weddings are happening. And that has been true for me, both as an officiant and as a friend and attendee of said weddings. So
I've done 3 weddings in the last month, and I have a funeral that was from someone who died last year. This week.
Yeah.
And none of them are ones they're all ones that I'm involved in. If someone invites me to a wedding as a guest, I'm just stopping their friend. And then I don't have that problem anymore. I'm done being friends with people getting married. That's over. Unless I'm part of it. And that's not because I'm cocky and think I deserve to be a part of it. It's just because I'm tired and I don't want to go to weddings anymore. And so, but it's true. It's wedding season.
Yeah.
How many you got?
So I did one 2 weeks ago and I've got one next week. I realized that this coming weekend is my birthday weekend and all I want to do is nothing. Because I'm
Yes.
So
happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
I hope you get to do nothing, and I hope it's all you ever dreamed.
Yeah. My birthday is actually next Monday, but I was trying to think about how would I observe it this weekend, and I was just like, I've already got enough stuff on the calendar. I sort of don't really want to do anything. I just want to chill. So
that makes sense. That makes total sense.
We've got another wedding coming up. That's the first weekend of November too. So
nice. I have a wedding sometime in November, and then I've got a couple already lined up I think we've got 2 lined up for next spring.
So did you?
They're really lovely.
Yeah, I love them. I did a really lovely interment this Saturday at one of my favorite cemeteries in town, and
I love sentences like that. I just love sentences like that. A really lovely interment at one of my favorite cemeteries in town. a sentence that every clergy person, if not has said, at least has known and felt in their heart.
Yes.
Yep.
Because it's like the kind of historic Nashville cemetery, and the woman who died was 96, and so her family, generations of people are buried in this plot in this historic cemetery. And I mean, it's like what you think of when you think of a cemetery. There's big, mausoleum like structures and big stone sculptures and obelisks and some of the real famous people who were not necessarily like buried in like the city or state cemeteries, but their names are on all the pikes and everything in town. You know who these names are just if you spend a lot of time around town. They're all buried there, and it was it feels like a very thin place in a way, because it's on top of this hill, just right kind of outside of downtown. And I don't know, I feel the kind of weight of both death and mortality, and also kind of transcendence there.
That's awesome.
So since
we have one of those. Ours is called
season.
Spring Grove. What's that?
We're in spooky season now.
We are in spooky. Yeah. Hey, this is thematically appropriate. I mean, first of all, you can always talk about death with me, Kira. Always.
Thank you.
But always. People don't know that at least 3/4 of Kira's and my friendship is me sending her memes on Instagram of skeletons. That's pretty much how we developed our friendship. Skeletons dancing and possums. I think that's pretty much. I was thinking about the other day about how chaotic my Instagram stories are, because I've started to have like some friends or some parishioners like follow me on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, yes. I'm sorry, you're seeing the inside of my brain like this. Yes. I have had I've had parishioners, very few parishioners follow me on Instagram, which is part of the reason why I kind of let loose on the stories. And I'm much less measured there than I am anywhere else, like in terms of Facebook or anything else. But I have had a few people kind of say something. They usually are complimentary, but every once in a while it's sort of like, wow, like didn't know that you were so dark. And I was like, and I literally, I was having lunch with someone who is a wonderful person in our church, and she's dealing with cancer right now, and she's going through cancer treatment. And we were talking about it, and we've been through this in our lives and with in our professions, and so we're talking. And then she said something. She goes, I love your stories on Instagram. And I was like, you follow me on Instagram? She's like, yeah. And I was like, you look at my stories, huh? She's like, yeah. And I was like, how's that going? She's like, oh no, I like it. You're pretty dark. And I was like, yeah, I'm holding back. And she goes, you're holding back there? I'm like, yeah, I'm holding back. She's like, wow. I was like, yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, if things get dark for you and you ever want to talk to me, clearly you're not going to freak me out.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with you for sure. By the way, I have to pause for a second and highlight Leslie Martin's fantastic comment about Wedding Season 2 and calling it Wedding Season 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yes.
I had my best friends from high school. Anytime anything was, we would always just come up with some random sequel and then call it Electric Boogaloo every time. Like do you want to watch Godfather 2? Be like, Electric Boogaloo? No, not Electric Boogaloo. Don't do that to Godfather 2. Just checking.
Right.
So anyways, I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, Kira, we have Kira, friends, I'm trying to get rid of saying guys, friends. Kira came up with a topic for today.
Well, we had chatted about it previously.
That's true.
I wanted to start by asking you, did you have a blessing of the animals at Church of the Redeemer?
We did,
this weekend, or you have one?
We did it on Sunday. Our tradition is to do it, is to celebrate on the Sunday closest to the Feast of St. Francis. And at the 5:00 service, which is generally our Eucharist in the Celtic tradition. And then we add a blessing of the animals to that. And we usually move it outside, though this time it was raining. So we did have it indoors. But it worked out just fine as far as I understand. I was not there. This is the first, I was coming back from a wedding in New York, and it was it's the first time since I've been a priest actually that I missed blessing of the animals. It's also sort of an auspicious occasion for me, in my head anyway, no one else, but in my head, because my first Sunday at Redeemer was 5 years ago on October 2nd, and there we had Blessing of the Animals on my first Sunday.
Oh,
And then I went
Kind of an
immediately over
anniversary
to
for you.
yes. And then I immediately went over to a hospice center and did last rites for a parishioner. My first day on the job.
Wow.
It was awesome. I mean, it was horrible and we were very sad. But to this
Right.
day, that parishioner's husband and I are very close and have a great relationship. And he'll point out like Phil's first day on the job. He was there with my wife. So, but like it was like all the things you do in parish ministry all in one day, including bets.
Yeah.
So anyways, but yeah, I love Blessing of the Animals. It's ridiculous and I love it.
When you say it's ridiculous, what part is ridiculous?
Oh gosh. Well, it's the same readings every year.
Okay.
It's us trying to kind of create we are insistent that it be in the context of a Eucharistic liturgy. And it's ridiculous in maybe the best sense of the word, but like everybody's just in a totally different headspace.
Yeah.
Anyways, then there's like, we've had people never during the service, but have to be like, well, like what, could my dog take communion, and you're like, no. And then they're like, I'm like, and then someone's like, well, since they can't take communion, maybe we should have treats for them. And it's a whole thing. All that being said, I love it. I mean, I love people's animals.
Yeah. It's like,
I think I'd rather just we all hang out with our animals than me have to put on vestments and like do a liturgy when I'm like, can't we just all hang out with our animals and dig each other? Like, do you really need to hear me preach right now?
Yeah. It's definitely a little chaotic almost always.
Yep. And yes, Leslie points out that her mom, Carolyn, was a big part of starting the Blessing of the Animals at Redeemer because it's her birthday too. Her birthday is October 2nd. Or October 3rd, I think her birthday is, or 4th. Her birthday is October 4th, which is the Feast of St. Francis.
Feast of St. Francis, yes.
So yeah, and cats always freak out. There's one guy that usually brings a chicken. I really want to get an elephant to Blessing of the Animals one day.
Oh, wow.
I just want to, if it's going to be ridiculous, like I want it to be ridiculous.
Just go full on.
I mean, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I want it to be absurd. I tried back in California. Krista's grandma, my wife's grandmother, she has a ranch, a horse ranch, and a cattle ranch. And I really wanted to try to get her to bring some cattle and horses, like drive them into the city in her trailer and bring them out. It never worked out, but I wanted to do a blessing of the livestock just because it's like, let's just take this thing to the next level.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think about it?
I love it.
Did you have it at the church on Sunday?
Yeah. This year was a little kind of not that well attended. It had been kind of raining off and on all weekend, basically. And I think a lot of people kind of opted out. But last year, when we were mostly online and we had a really nice day for Blessing of the Animals, like people came out and we were able to, it's a natural thing to do outside. So it was really easy for people to be outside. I grew up going to an Episcopal school, and like Blessing of the Animals Day was like the best day. And I think as a kid and even as an adult, like for the church to offer a blessing of something in your life that is so important to like your family, your experience of the world, your kind of day-to-day life, but that isn't often kind of shared with the church, I think is really important. And it especially was for me as a kid of just like, oh, hey, the church, I think my cat is important, and the church thinks my cat is important to me too.
Yes.
And there was a little chatter this year about like how ridiculous animal blessings are, how it isn't really in the true spirit of St. Francis's ministry. And I just had a big reaction of like, why do you guys want to like poo-poo all over?
You feel like Steve Carell in The Office when he's like, "You are a thief of joy."
Yes.
Why are you the way that you are?
Yeah.
I hate so many things about the way you choose to be. First of all, if anyone wants things to be more in the manner of St. Francis of Assisi and they're complaining about it, then they need to give up every single one of their possessions, period.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to give up every single one of your possessions, which I'm definitely not, then shut up. And I know that's not like a nice thing to say, but honestly, if you're not willing to give up all of your possessions, shut up about St. Francis and allow us all to bless some animals. That's it.
Right.
That's all. That's my whole thing. Like,
and like of any time in the world, you know,
again,
I've
right.
kind of formulated our saint
Of
our
all the
animal
times.
blessing. Yeah, I've sort of formulated our animal blessing to be kind of I've taken it in the direction of like creation care and prayers for creation, of which our pets and other animals are a part. And I mean, what a time to pray for creation and to have a renewed appreciation for and commit to care for creation more broadly, you know, and not just the pets in our households or in our on our property. And so like I got kind of bent out of shape about people being grumpy about it. So.
Right. Well, and you were saying like now, not, I mean, everything you just said, yes. And also our pets have been some of the things that have helped us the most through this impossible time.
Yes.
And one of the things I wasn't there on Sunday, but and it was hard to not be there, but one of the things I love about Blessing of the Animals is when you see people when you see people with their pets and you see them like you and like you see them differently.
Mm-hmm.
You like, there's a beautiful sort of vulnerability and personal sort of like they're showing something of their personal self.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, it's a little bit like they invited you into their house and didn't clean up first. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't apologize, or maybe they apologize a little bit, but it is what it is. Like, it's such a weird, you know, we're so guarded even when we don't mean to be. And our lives are so curated, and how people see our lives. I mean, it's great that we've been able to use social media and Zoom and things to connect. But we also, I mean, look at this. Look at how I was actually like, I'm framed by these windows. And I wasn't framed perfectly, so I moved. And paying attention to which hat I wear and all this stuff. Look, I'm fixing it again. Nope, I don't like that. I'll move it back like this. There you go. And we do all that. Like, you moved your chair over there. You know, we do these things.
Yeah, I like make sure and clean up before we
right. Y'all, she can't keep her chair there. She wouldn't be able to get out of the door. Okay. But it looks good and it makes sense for this picture. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with us doing that. In fact, when people don't curate their Zoom backgrounds, I'm always like, could you have thrown it? Could you go a little effort? Just like, this is a job interview. Could you throw in a little effort? I'm just saying. But anyways, but when you like see their pets, you see some different side of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if their pet sucks, but they love that pet anyway, you see that. Like, you see that, and that's great. Like, oh, this is my dog who hates everybody, including me, and he might try to bite you while you bless him. Will you bless him? And I'm like, yeah, I 100% will. And he's like, yeah, I have to keep him over here. I mean, like, that whole thing, that whole energy. I used to bring my dog Django, and up until the last couple of years of his life, I had to have someone else hold him while I was doing stuff, and not just Krista, because the other dogs got him all worked up. The last couple of years, he was just chill. He was like, whatever, we're good. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, that was me this year.
She was freaking out with.
I mean, we've done 3 sessions of our group obedience class, and I was like, she's doing really well. I'm going to see how she does at Blessing of the Animals. And we kind of like got to the church early, and we're working on remaining calm. And then other dogs and people started getting there, and she was just like, oh, hello.
Yes.
Like, so good to see everybody. And
this is amazing.
And like, not every dog or person wants to be greeted with that level of enthusiasm.
Nope. I do, for the record. Okay. I always want to be greeted with that kind of enthusiasm by both dogs and humans. Oh yeah.
And like, she, you know, was chatting with some other dogs and barking, you know, they were barking back and forth, and eventually she got to the point where she calmed down a little bit, but it was a little stressful for me as somebody who was trying to lead it. And I was like, I should have made Michael come and handle the dog.
It's so hard. It's so hard. There's a really great picture of the last two, but the second to last blessing of the animals of Django's life. I'm standing up in full vestments on this little pedestal outside, and he's lying down behind me at my feet.
Aww.
And the shot is from behind. So you see all the people with all their pets and me talking to them, and this little dog hanging out. He's not little at all, but big boy hanging out at my feet. The last couple years he could do that. He was chill like that. And I really liked that. There was one year back in California where it was always outside because it's California. And then wonder of wonders, it rained that day. So we ended up bringing all the pets inside. And I was just like, guys, we can handle this. But it was great. Leslie asks a really actually fantastic theological question. Do we bless the water in the bowls for the animals? And she's asking because in a previous conversation, when we were talking about the consecrated wine, she says about excess blessed things being carefully disposed of and animals just splash it everywhere. So I'm actually just curious. And I mean, I have my answer ready to go, but do you want to field this or do you want me to field it, Kira?
I don't bless the water in the bowls. So
no, but I mean, in terms of
okay,
understanding the difference.
Yeah. You go for it.
Okay.
I'll be interested to see what you have to say.
Well, I want to say there's a difference between blessing something and consecrating something.
Yes.
Okay. And I know that we get those mixed up sometimes because we will use the words bless to consecrate something. That's why it's tricky. But consecrated water and wine are used for very specific purposes. The consecrated water is used for baptism or blessed holy water. But holy literally is the same word that is used like hagios, holy. In Latin, I think it becomes sanctus. That's where you get that sanctified, like saints. We get the term saints from there, but it's that set apart, consecrated. All those words mean basically the same thing. Holy actually doesn't mean perfect. Holy just means set apart for a specific use. Okay, for divine use. Holy water that is water that has been blessed for the purpose, consecrated for the purpose of baptism. And wine and bread, same thing. They have been consecrated for the purpose of communion. So we dispose of those things carefully because they have been used for one thing and they're only supposed to be used for that one thing. And then we want to dispose of it honorably or with grace and dignity, whatever fancy language you use. Blessing something doesn't have to mean a consecration. If I bless someone when they come up and instead of taking communion, they ask for a blessing, I'm not consecrating them so they can't wash their head ever or else. And they're not being set apart for holy use inherently, although we would love for people to see their lives that way. But we're actually pronouncing God's blessing on something. So when we bless our animals, we're not consecrating them for divine use. We are proclaiming God's blessing upon that thing. Now, all that being said, Kira's right. No, I do not bless or consecrate the water for the animals. We might, in some places, in one church I was at, we used holy water that was like baptismal water, and we used it to sprinkle with I think we used rosemary bushes there because we didn't have like a bunch of those things.
The
aspergillium.
Yes.
Aspergillium. We didn't have a bunch of aspergillium, so aspergillii. So we used rose. But anyways, Leslie, I hope that's helpful. Kira, did I get it right?
Yeah, I think I want to say a little bit more about blessing generally because I was taught, or sort of the short version of like what a priest can do that a deacon can't do is absolve, bless, and consecrate.
Ooh.
Right. But really, anyone can bless, right? I mean, if you pray before your meal at dinner with your family and you're blessing the food. So blessing is something that any Christian can do. I think what priests are doing is like pronouncing God's blessing in a particular way.
Basically using the authority of the church.
Yeah. Pronouncing the church's blessing on, say, a marriage, like we were kind of talking about.
We are spokespersons. We're spokespersons for the Christian, the Christian brand.
Yeah.
we are official spokespersons of the, like if I walk around saying that In-N-Out Burger is the greatest burger, I'm correct, right? But like I'm not an officially I'm not an official sponsor of In-N-Out Burger. They're not paying me to say that. But if like, but like, so see me when I bless things, it's like I'm the manager of the In-N-Out Burger saying that In-N-Out is great, rather than a customer going around and saying it. That's a really crass way to describe what we do, which is why I like it so much.
Well, I mean, I think the what I want to communicate is that everybody is capable of blessing. You know,
Yes.
I know a lot of parents that bless their children on their way out the door, or you know, there are ways of blessing that are not necessarily the church blessing a thing, or the priest requires a priest to bless a thing or an event.
Right.
But there is also, I think it's when we talk about something like blessing animals, or other churches have something like blessing of the bicycles, or
blessing of the backpacks.
Blessing of the backpacks. I
got a friend in Jersey. I got a friend in Jersey who blesses fire trucks.
Yeah, I was asked by some relatives to bless their RV when they got a new RV that they were going to spend a good portion of the year living in.
Yeah.
You know, we bless houses, and part of that is about, we as representatives of the church are pronouncing our blessing on that thing, and we're saying this is important to you, and it is important to your life and your livelihood, and the church blesses it and prays for safety and peace and all those wonderful things, for it to be a place of love and wholeness and safety. But it isn't necessarily like you have to be a priest to do that. Right. I'm going to put myself out of a job just by talking about this.
No, I mean, I think that's why I go to like we have a specific bodily entity called the church, and the church has specific people who it asks to be official sort of spokespersons of our community. And so when we bless something, that we are doing so in the name of the community, but it doesn't mean that it's somehow a better blessing than a blessing that you would give on that a lay person would give on something. I think that's right on. Right on. Or when someone sneezes, Leslie says, that's right. Because remember, when they're sneezing, their soul is trying to escape.
Right.
And when you say bless you, as Milhouse says on The Simpsons, when you say bless you, you're cramming their soul back in. So you're welcome, I guess is what I'm saying to people. When and I like Mireya pointing out that they actually have inmate dog training programs that teach empathy through caring for a pet, which is a blessing. Kathy Baggett emails me and says, isn't blessing something, whether it be pets or people or whatever, isn't it just recognizing God's presence in them? And while I think that's sort of an abstract way of thinking about it, that's not an insult, by the way, Kathy, not an insult. I think, overall, I think so. I would say it's recognizing God's favor, but I think the way that God shows God's favor is in God's presence. I think God's presence is a blessing. So yeah, I think you're right. And of course, as Kira said, anyone can do that. But
our real topic for today.
Well, no, this is great.
No, well, I kind of wanted to lead building into,
yes.
So we bless our animals, we've blessed our cats and dogs, and I've blessed a tortoise and chickens and whatever else might show up. But do animals have souls?
Do animals have souls, friends?
First of all, I think we should define what is a soul.
I think that's the only way to go forward. So what's a soul, Kira Austin Young?
So what is a soul? So most, not even speaking specifically Christianly, most kind of religions, theology, philosophy, describes the soul as like, it's different from your living, breathing, conscious body. It's what gives you your personality, your rationality, your kind of all of that, all this stuff that kind of makes you, our mind, emotions, will. It's sort of who we are as in humans as a human being. And then to kind of, when we think about what happens after we die, the idea is that, our souls and our bodies are distinct from one another. And while our body may die, our soul has some quality of immortality.
Yeah.
Does that?
Yes. So
what we're
really, so no, I think that's right. The soul is that thing and that word soul is tricky because the word soul that's used in Greek is psyche, is often translated as life. But is a different word for life.
It has that connotation of like psyche. It's kind of
right. That's where we get the word. That's where
from.
we get psyche.
And then in Latin, it's anima, which is like, animation. It's what makes you.
What animates you.
What animates you.
So we do separate in some way. We are stating that there is something, a spiritual reality that is a part of you, but that is not confined eternally to the body, your mortal body. Man, it's pretty improbable, isn't it? I mean, this whole thing that we're hinging our whole lives on.
Yeah, but I think we certainly get this sense, especially those of us, as we were kind of talking, who have been around death, that there is something that, it isn't just breath. Like that's what we get right from the Bible. When God creates human beings, God breathes into them and sort of insouls them with breath. There's a tie to breath. There's a tie to spirit. There's a tie to the divine. And yet I'm also very hesitant about the separation between body and soul, because as Christians, we proclaim a bodily resurrection.
Thank you.
So there is this sense that the body is just this vessel and it's not that important. Like what's important is your soul, your spirit, your mind, your heart. I'm using all those mind.
Well, it's like you've seen that post that says you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. And I'm like, nope, that's not true.
Yep.
That's not true. I am a human being. And I wouldn't say I'm having a spiritual experience. I don't think that's the right language, but I think there's a spiritual element to my humanity.
Right.
But I'm a human being. And by the way, and Kira and I this is a place where we are in lockstep about the church historically and currently, whether people realize it or not, proclaims a bodily resurrection, which means we believe, whether it's exactly the body parts we have here or something else, that when we are in eternal life, that there will be material to us, that there will be some physical material reality to our resurrected soul, that it's not just a bunch of spirits in an ether somewhere or living on in a memory or an idea, but there is an actual physical substantive reality to the resurrected life that is part of us. And the fact that we don't understand it doesn't mean we don't believe in it. I'm just speaking for you. Does that sound right? Is that a fair thing to say about you?
Yeah. Well, and I want to, this whole tension comes from the very different worldviews of sort of the Hebrew Bible and what arose out of the lived experience of the Hebrew people and Jewish scriptures, and then the sort of Greek ideals that were going around the time of the New Testament and early Christianity. So, you get this kind of Greek idea of the spirit being something, or the soul being something that lives on long after you, or that has some kind of degree of immortality, where the Hebrew worldview is much more that it's one thing. And when you talk about the soul, it just means the thing that is endowed with life.
Right. And when you talk about Jews who believed in the resurrection, of which Jesus was one, you go to Jerusalem and you still today can see these graves that are all pointing towards the holy hill in the belief There are very specific rules in Jewish graveyards about how the remains are treated, because the expectation is that they will be raised up in those physical bodies.
Mm-hmm.
When the last day comes, that there will be a resurrection, that will be a physical resurrection of that body. And Christians have sort of, like many other Jewish things, we've just sort of taken what parts we like of that and bastardized them and done what we'd like. In Jesus' name, so it ends up being okay, I guess. But I mean, that's the idea, right? I mean, that's the Jewish idea, and it has been married to a as you said, a Roman kind of Greco-Roman philosophy, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
And we've sort of like done our mishmash of that.
Yeah. So if that's confusing, I mean, good, like it should be. And I think there are places where Paul really kind of does talk about the separation of the soul and the physical body, in ways that seem to challenge what you and I are saying. So it's tricky, but to kind of realize that those are two schools of thought that are kind of happening in our same religion, kind of religious genealogy in a way.
Yeah.
So do animal, I mean, here's the other thing. Humans are animals.
Humans are animals, and we have this idea that somehow we are different than the rest of, that we are different from creation.
Mm-hmm.
And while we might be distinct from the rest of creation in our cognitive and intellectual abilities, which I'm not minimizing, those are a big deal and might actually be the big difference, maybe. We are distinct in specific ways in terms of our consciousness and how we experience it. But we are, even in the story, just one more piece of creation. And we are part of the animal kingdom, as it were, which really bothers us.
Yeah, like biologically, we are animals.
Well, it's like that shit, like man versus nature. And you're like, man is nature. Like, we're just a part of nature, humans. Anyways, so yes, so what do we do with that? So historically, I believe that the churches, I don't know about the Episcopal Church, but more traditional churches, the Catholic Church, I believe the Orthodox Church, would argue that animals absolutely do not have souls. Mm-hmm. And that dogs don't go to heaven. They're lovely and fantastic if you like them, but that animals don't have a soul and animals don't have an afterlife. And you and I grew up literally believing all dogs go to heaven because there's a movie about it and everything.
There's a movie.
Movies don't lie. Very
formative experience for our generation, actually.
Yeah. So what do we do with that?
You know, I think I was doing a little preparation for this topic, actually. So
I'm so glad that you did, because I kept meaning to. I was like, I'm going to go find this section in the Summa and see what Thomas says.
Yeah. Oh, Thomas says absolutely not.
Yeah. He says no,
absolutely not. I think, you know, my mind has maybe been a little changed by this. I believe that animals have souls. They are probably different kinds of souls than humans have in terms of that which persists long after our body is gone. Have I think anybody that has worked with animals, either as a pet or just has known animals, knows that they have personalities. They have, there is something in there that, while it isn't the kind of rational consciousness that humans have, is a kind of soul-like presence that is animating.
They make decisions. They make decisions. There's a consciousness, even if there's not a self-awareness the way we would think of it. There's a consciousness that exists. My dog knows who I am and has feelings for me. That's just a thing.
Yeah.
That needs to be reckoned with if we're going to have a serious conversation about, do dogs have souls?
Right. And even, people that are zookeepers or who study other kinds of animals, they know, I have friends that have chickens. All the different chickens have different personalities.
That's 100% true.
Some are scared, some are brave, some are friendly, some are antisocial. Like, they have characteristics, and maybe this is just maybe we're anthropomorphizing too much.
Well, I don't know. Are we? I mean, that's the thing.
Are we attributing human characteristics to animals? And like, maybe, I don't, I think one of the things is, if I believe that animals have souls, I'm not a vegetarian. I eat them for food.
Well, yeah.
And
that's why it's called soul food. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
And the more we learn about animals and intelligence and things like that, I mean, I'll put it out there that yes, I eat animals for food, and I am also like kind of uncomfortable about it. And I have sort of my own ethics around it, where like, I know people that like can't eat meat unless if it's on a bone or if it looks anything like the animal that it was a part of. And I feel like if you can't reckon with that, like, you don't need to be eating meat. Like,
I think my most, I don't have a problem with eating animals. I do think that the way that we've set up eating animals in our culture is just debauched. I mean, it just feels really, really disconnected from any kind of care for creation. But I think, you look at the people who for centuries, for millennia, people cared for animals and then killed them and ate them. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't seen as a sign of disrespect to the creature. But I think it's like, I've gone pheasant hunting and we ate the pheasants. Mm-hmm. And if you shoot a pheasant down and it's not totally dead, you grab it and you wring its neck. Mm-hmm. But you wring its neck because you don't want something to suffer.
Right.
By the way, like you break something's neck because it's suffering.
How, like, if you were raising chickens in your backyard to slaughter them, it's a quick,
So I'm reading For Whom the Bell Tolls right now.
Oh.
I've never read that. Have you ever read For Whom the Bell Tolls?
I went through a big Hemingway phase. So yes.
So there's this whole chapter 10, that is about this woman recounting a story where they killed all the fascists in their town. Mm-hmm. And in it, but there's conversations about like, I mean, I don't think killing is right, but I've killed people. And this is in the context of a war, in the turn of the century, Spanish Civil War. And they're like, this one guy's like, no, I mean, like, killing's wrong. And the other person's like, but you've killed people. And he goes, yeah. And I'll do it again. And I know why I did it. And I understand it. But also, I don't know that I think it was the right thing to do. But then there's this character, there's this person that they kill. And this, what it turns, they're like killing all these fascists in their town, like in this ritualistic fashion. And this one person, I just read this morning, and I was like on the elliptical reading about them killing fascists, which, I mean, nothing like killing fascists to get your blood going.
That's right. There you
which by the way, now is apparently a controversial thing to say in America. Like if you're anti-fascist, all of a sudden that's controversial. But anyways, I digress on a digression. So, but in the story, like, there's this one guy that they kill, and the woman watching who's telling the story is like, that's when everything turned for her, because she was like, I get that we're killing all the fascists and he's a fascist, and so if he needed to die, then he needed to die, but he shouldn't have died like that, was her point. Literally, she was like he should, like, there can be dignity in death, and that's not what we gave that person.
Right. And
so I'm comfortable with the possibility that you could kill an animal and eat it, but I think that the way that those animals are treated in their life matters.
Yeah, I want to touch on Leslie's question about, this basically about do plants have souls? What does that mean?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Our ability to kind of to eat and survive. And frankly, I mean, I think we need to reckon with the fact that post-fall, anyway, I don't know what the whole situation was in the Garden of Eden, but post-fall, most of nature is characterized by violence. Even if I don't eat an animal,
the lion is not actually going to lie down with the lamb without divine intervention.
Right. I mean, my dog killed a baby bird.
Yeah. My dog killed a mouse a month ago. Yeah. And
I was horrified.
Yeah.
And
yep.
There's a level of violence even if we try to opt out of it, that is present in nature for the survival. I mean, a bird eats a worm. Even herbivores are, consuming bugs along with the grass. There is death for there to be life.
Yeah. And the idea that death is inherently bad is something that we should be dealing with too. Like resurrection as the thing that fixes a bad thing, except that things die and man, if nobody ever died, there'd be way too many people.
Yeah. Around the summer, I was having a lot of issues with a local Facebook group because people were finding a lot of like small birds that had fallen out of nests and other kind of mice, possums, other kind of animals that were having babies around this time that had either been injured or hurt or abandoned by their parents, mother, and everyone like really wanted to like fix the situation.
Right.
And part of me was like, I get that impulse.
Yep.
But also things die. Like,
yes, that's right.
Birds have a lot of babies and some of them are going to die.
Right. I mean, we just had this big cicada brood X, which had billions, literally, or trillions of cicadas pop up. And a bunch of them, after being in the ground 17 years, like finally pop up and they're like missing a wing.
Yeah.
Or get smushed but get eaten by a squirrel on the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're like, oh, buddy, but that's the deal.
Yeah.
That's the actual deal. Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was thinking on my walk today with the dog, how, we've been taking these dog training classes with the dog, and our trainer was like, yeah, here's the thing, like dogs, they've got to be given structure. They've got to be given, you kind of need to make the choices for them, because if they're just left to their own devices, they're going to make a lot of really bad decisions.
Yep.
And I was like, who else are like that? Humans.
Oh yeah. All the things we say about dogs are true about people.
Yeah.
And by the way, and this is what it's like with kids. People will be like, oh man, kids, they just want whatever they want, no matter what anyone says. And I'm like, that also sounds like adults. Go on. They're like, well, kids get cranky when they're tired. Check. Okay. Oh, that kid was hungry and that was his only problem. If he'd just eaten something. Check. Like you just go down the list. Well, that kid was just believing and saying a bunch of silly things that weren't based in reality. Take a look around you. You're describing the world of all humans. But yes, so I'm with you. And this points to the possibility of dogs having souls. I want to address the plants thing really quick, and then we need to decide if dogs go to heaven.
Okay.
And then elephants.
And then elephants.
I mean, we know cats go to. I won't say it. I was just kidding. I'm just kidding. I am actually very kidding. Cats are lovely. I think they're wild animals that we've pretended to domesticate is my problem with cats. And I'm also allergic to them. If I wasn't allergic to them, there'd be 12 in this house.
Yeah,
okay?
That's fair. I mean, I'm fine. I live with tiny panthers. It's good.
Yeah. That's the thing is I grew up with cats, and aside from being allergic to them, I would be sitting in there like watching TV, and they would just literally every once in a while jump on the back of on my back and scratch me and bite my head. And I was like, I was just sitting here. So I have issues with cats, but I know that that's not fair. No, I don't think rocks, plants, and dirt have souls. I know that grass is alive. I think this is the difference between being alive and having some kind. I think the soul as something distinct is important, and I don't think that plants have souls. I'm not sure. I think animals have souls, actually, I'm not sure that animals. I'll just say I'm not sure that animals do experience the afterlife. And if so, fine. That being said, does that make me a bad person? Yes.
Yes.
No, I don't. So I don't. There's a whole lot I don't know. Mm-hmm. I definitely know that there's nothing in the scriptures that tells us that animals go to heaven or have any kind of life after death.
Right.
None. Including, but what we do have is, but we also, scriptures also don't mention dinosaurs, and we know they exist or existed.
Yeah.
And will again. Thanks, science.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, right? Again, we kind of need to like back up a little bit and say like, well, what is heaven? because I do think the
Right.
Bible is clear that animals are not, maybe I shouldn't say that the Bible is clear, because the Bible's rarely clear about anything.
Rarely.
But in the pictures of the new creation, both in the Old Testament prophets and in the new, creation is present. You mentioned earlier, like the lion lying down with the lamb.
Yeah.
And the child playing over the nest of an adder. Like, these are images that are present about like the new creation,
right.
The new heaven, the new earth. After Jesus comes back and God restores creation. Is that, to me, that's different from quote unquote heaven. And I do think that animals, pets, whatever, will be present in that new creation.
This is exciting.
But when we talk about heaven, I think we're often thinking of like that place up in the clouds with
that you go when you die as a reward for your good behavior and believing the right things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, and I think I want to come down on this weird place where I do think animals have souls, but that those souls do not persist after death.
I'm comfortable with that. I'm mostly comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think it's a coherent point of view, first of all, and I like coherence a lot. Secondly, it's nuanced. It creates space for the possibility of different kinds of ways of soul being. I think that's a really important thing, that different kinds of souls have different purposes and different existences. And the idea that just because we have a soul means we're immortal. No, the radical nature of here's the thing that we got to understand as 21st century Christians. It is not supposed that that there's any part of us that is inherently immortal, including our soul. That is hard. So let me say that again. It is not a given in the Christian faith that because you have a soul, you are immortal. Our language in our scriptures and all over our burial rite, all over our funeral service, you alone are immortal and we are mortal. The resurrection that we believe in is something that is not natural. It is not inevitable. It is only inevitable because God chooses it to be inevitable. We were not, according to Christian theology, we did not pre-exist, and any existence post-creation, post-death, is miraculous by its nature. So that being said, I came into this conversation thinking that animals don't have souls and they don't go to heaven. I think that animals go to heaven now. But my picture of this eternal life is like all of that which is life and has been life, like is given a place to continue into that. I don't know how else to describe it, but why not ants in heaven? Right. Although I don't know, like mosquitoes.
I was just going to say like mosquitoes and like maybe roaches. I don't know.
I don't know. So yeah, maybe I don't then. Maybe just dogs.
Maybe just ducks.
I think you're right. I think they have souls and they don't go to heaven. And I think you're right. I think that you're right. And what I'll say is that doesn't make you a bad person. There. Now someone's told you, even though Kira Austin Young, you do not believe animals go to heaven, you are not a horrible person.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You are horrible for many other reasons, but not, I'm just kidding. You are not a horrible person. Here's what I think. I think then, okay, that reality, we are able to love something, and that doesn't mean that if it doesn't go to heaven, it doesn't mean that love didn't matter.
Yeah. I think I really want to push back on this idea, and maybe it's because I've listened to too many country songs about that heaven is just full of the things that we like to do. Like that's our vision of heaven.
Right. It's just us playing ping pong with Jimi Hendrix.
It's where I can go fishing and hang out with my dog and watch football all day,
Yes.
I think I'm pushing back in part against a very sort of cultural vision of heaven that is not that's not biblical, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would love heaven to be just like what I want to do all day.
I think it was like The Good Place.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about I don't want to spoil the ending, but have you seen The Good Place?
Yes.
Okay, we got to talk about that offline, because the way that show ends, it might be, and I was not prepared for it to be. I resisted that entire show as one of the best shows of all time, for the record. It's one of the best television shows of all time, period. Comedy, drama, doesn't matter. Good Place is one of the best shows of all time. And the first season is the most exciting because of the premise. But then every season after it, they continue to deconstruct the premise, and you think, therefore, it's going to get sort of rococo and like sort of fold back on itself and somehow fall apart, and like there'll be many metaphysical sharks being jumped. Yeah. That never happens. It only goes deeper into a philosophy or a perspective that's powerful, and it ends beautifully. Like, it ends in a magnificent, like, soul-changing way for me. But the idea is that, like, the Good Place, that the construct of that first season is it's all the stuff you like, and you can eat all the frozen yogurt you want and no calories. You don't gain any weight or whatever.
Right. There's shrimp cocktail everywhere.
Right. But that being said, Leslie makes kind of the point, like, yeah, but like, I really want my cats to be in heaven, and I want to believe that. And here's what I'll say. Like, this is one of those things where I think you should believe that. Genuinely. Yeah. I'm not saying this like to be like pat you on the head or anything, Leslie, because that's not our relationship. Like, if you buy that, believe that. And if, like, well, clock's going to go off, and it's going to ring a lot, because I guess it's 12. If you're right and we're wrong, like, we're wrong in a way that's we're not ruining the world here being wrong in this way.
No.
Like, and if you're wrong and we're right, same. Like,
yeah, like, I'm not gonna, if people really want to have that vision of heaven, and especially like when coping with a death or a loss, like, yeah. I'm not gonna like disabuse them of that notion.
Right. And also like, who says we're right? One of us is a heretic, and frankly, it's a very light heresy. But here's the deal. Leslie says, I'm not emotionally mature enough at this point in my life to give that hope up. Maybe we're not emotionally mature enough to recognize that the kind of love that we can experience with pets transcends even our own theological and biblical understandings. Like I think Kira's point makes sense, and I think I'm on board with it. But also, like, dude, if I get to heaven and Django is there, yes. I will be I love that dog.
Yeah.
I love that dog. And that, I don't know this is not the way to end this conversation. However, when your dog dies and you get another dog pretty quickly, like, that says something different about pets than it does about people. But I got another dog we got a dog in 5 days.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole other conversation. And we love our dog. We love his name is Francis.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh, like St. Francis, right? No, we named him after Frank Sinatra. He's named after Francis Albert Sinatra. So I always tell people he's named after my favorite Catholic.
Yeah, it's okay. People are like, oh, your dog's name is Ruth, like after the biblical character. And I'm like, or after the Supreme Court justice.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I think I've already told you that Paige is getting a beta fish because she wants to name it Ruth Beta Ginsburg.
No.
She was like, Dad, I want to get a beta fish. And I was like, no, dude, you had a beta fish. That was not great. And then it died. It was sick, and then it died. We're not getting you a beta fish. She's like, no, I can handle a beta fish. I'm like, you don't need a fish. And she's like, but Dad, I want to name it Ruth Beta Ginsburg. And I was like, let's go to the pet store.
That is a girl after my own heart.
You and Paige, I can't wait till you hang. Okay. What have you been listening to, Kira?
Yesterday I went down a little bit of a Willie Nelson rabbit hole and listened to Red-Headed Stranger on repeat.
Yes. One of my favorite genuinely problematic albums.
Yeah. Oh, it's super. There's some super weird stuff on there that I'm like, that didn't age well.
That didn't age well. That didn't age well is exactly right for a lot of the themes on that album, but it is a phenomenal record. So, Leslie did point out some people do the same with spouses that we did with dogs. That's a fair point. That's a very fair point. Okay, so Redheaded Stranger, have you listened to the album Stardust?
What are we by Willie Nelson? No, not recently.
Okay, so Stardust is the album right after Redheaded Stranger, and Redheaded Stranger was this big, like, oh my gosh, came into his own, and so he immediately followed by doing an album of standards.
Yes.
And I loved Redheaded Stranger more growing up, and now I love Stardust. It's like my favorite Willie Nelson album. But yeah, Redheaded Stranger is great. Can I Sleep in Your Arms Tonight is one of the best songs. And his version of Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. I mean, I grew up with some of that, like just because it's like what my parents were listening to.
Yes.
But I didn't ever get the whole album.
Yeah.
And there's
it's good.
There's also a local taco place in my neighborhood called Redheaded Stranger. So.
Yes. I love it. I love it.
What have you been listening to, Phil?
What have I been listening to? I went on a little Solange kick the other day. Did I say her name right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to screw that up. I'd be embarrassed. But I went on a little Solange kick the other day. And then there's a new Neil Young Live at Carnegie Hall in 1970 album. He keeps putting out live albums from like the 70s, and they all are basically him by guitar singing the same songs. And every time I'm like, thanks, that's great. Let's do that again. I'm in. I'm totally in.
Just
and then
here's my money. Take my money.
Yeah, take my money, please. And then I'm in a big. There's a new Brandi Carlile album.
There is, yeah. And
it's quite good. It's very, very good.
Awesome.
It might be great. I'm not sure yet, but it's very good.
I went to see Big Frida in concert on Saturday night.
Yeah, how was that?
It was very intense. You know, my husband was like, "What are we going to see?" And I was like, "Well, it's more about the show. Like, you don't have to like love the music, but it is about like the show and like wear your dancing shoes. It's going to be like a party." There was a lot of twerking, not by me or my husband.
Why not? Why don't y'all? I don't know how.
Because I'm too old. I will throw out my back.
Throw my back. Yeah. I was.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going to your doctor? What happened? I was twerking.
I was twerking at a concert. So, but it was, you know, just a very like entertaining, energetic show.
Yeah. I'm jealous of you. That sounds fantastic. I have a show. Oh. I'm going to see the Stones.
Oh.
Yep. I'm going to fly out to Los Angeles for one day and go see the Rolling Stones and come back.
I was going to say the Rolling Stones are here on Saturday.
I know. I've never seen them. And I'm sorry I missed him before Charlie died, but I've never seen them. And I am genuinely convinced this will be my last chance. And I just got into them in the last few years. And I've just got into them in the last few years.
Yeah.
But more importantly than seeing the Stones for my first and last time, last week I got tickets to Dylan, who's coming to Cincinnati.
Oh.
Probably my 36th or 37th time seeing him. I mean, very, very, very possibly the very last time I will see him.
Yeah.
Just because he's 80 and he's touring, and you just never know. You just never know. If he comes back again through the town, I will 100% go again. But this is I got tickets to that for November. I'm very, very excited.
Very cool.
So, all right, friend.
We will see you next week. It was great to be with you all. And until next time, are you there, God? It's Kira and Phil and the rest of y'all who joined us today.
Kira, Phil, and Leslie, and Kathy, and Mary, and Betsy. It's a good team.
It is.
Y'all take care. Have a good week.